Isn't it interesting how a thought can shift everything? How simple realization, held in just the right way, can melt away limitations that once seemed unshakable. Because for so long, you believed certain things were true. That you had to hold back. That you had to be careful. That you had to stay small. And maybe, just maybe, you never even questioned it. But now something is different, isn't it? Because as you listen now, as you allow these words to sink in effortlessly, naturally, you might begin to notice that those beliefs, they were never really yours. They were given to you, weren't they? Handed down, imposed, absorbed, like a script that you never were meant to follow. And yet, the moment you begin to question them, something shifts. What if those beliefs were never true? What if you never had to be small? What if everything you were told to suppress was actually your greatest power? And the more you wonder about this, the more something inside you begins to wake up. Because there was a time when you felt things deeply, when you expressed freely, when your emotions, they weren't something to fear, but something to use. And what happens when you return to that? Because anger, passion, intensity, they were never the enemy. No, the problem was what you were taught to believe about them. Because when fire is scattered, it destroys. But when it's focused, it creates. And the more you guide it, the more unstoppable it becomes. And so you might begin to notice that the more you slow down, the more powerful you become. Because haven't you already felt it? How the more you force things, the more resistance you create. How the more you try to suppress, the more pressure builds. And how the moment you let go, things just start to flow. And now, as you allow this truth to settle inside your mind, something else begins to shift. Because if you could be free of all those rules, those limits, the beliefs that once trapped you, who would you become? When you think about it, aren't you already becoming that now? Because something inside you knows, something inside you has always known, that real control was never about holding back. It was about stepping fully into yourself. And what happens when you do that completely? Because of course, you already know, don't you? And isn't it fascinating how the mind can hold on to things? Even things that were never truly yours. Rules, limits, beliefs. At some point they seemed real. But where did they come from? Who gave them to you? And why did you believe them? Because when you think about it, those rules, those limits, weren't they just someone else's fear? Someone else's misunderstanding? Someone else's attempt to control what they didn't understand? And yet the moment you question them, they begin to dissolve. And now, as you listen, as these words settle inside in just the right way, you might begin to wonder, what if the things that held you back were never real at all? Because you always thought that holding back kept you safe, that suppressing yourself was the right thing to do, that feeling too much, being too much was dangerous. But what if the very things you were taught to suppress were actually your greatest strengths? Because anger, emotion, intensity, these were never the enemy, no. The problem was never feeling too much. The problem was never being too powerful. The problem was that no one ever showed you how to focus that power. Because scattered energy can feel chaotic. It can feel overwhelming. But when it's guided, when it's channeled, it creates worlds. And you've already felt it, haven't you? The more you force things, the more they resist. How the more you suppress, the more pressure builds. And the more you hold back, the more disconnected you feel. And yet, the moment you let go, the moment you allow yourself to be fully present, everything shifts. what happens when you begin to trust yourself completely? Because there was a time when you moved through life effortlessly, before the rules, before the limits, before the world told you who to be. What if you could return to that? Not by going back, but by reclaiming what was always yours. Because as you listen now, as these words settle deeper inside you, something within, somewhere, is waking up. And maybe you can already feel it, that part of you, the part that knows that certainty, that clarity, that power that was always there. Because when you release the old rules, when you stop living by someone else's fear, you open yourself to a world with no limits. A world where every belief is a choice. And every choice creates a new reality. And when you think about it, haven't you already begun to step into that? And doesn't it feel absolutely right? Because of course, you already know, don't you?